the mining ship. Perseverance dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler 442c with all the grace of a brick hitting water. Captain Sarah Chen winced as the artificial gravity fluctuated, sending loose tools clattering across the bridge. 3 months into their deep space mining mission, and the old cargo hauler was already showing signs of strain. "Scan shows rich deposits of rare earth minerals in the northern continent," reported her navigator, Marcus Torres. "But there's something else, Captain. The energy readings are unusual." Sarah studied the holographic display floating above the command console. The planet looked standard enough, roughly Earth-sized, breathable atmosphere, moderate gravity. Perfect for a quick mining operation. The unusual energy signature appeared as a pulsing red dot in what looked like a mountain range. "Could be a natural phenomenon," suggested Dr. Elena Vasquez, their xenogeologist. "Or maybe remnants of ancient technology. Either way, we should investigate before we start mining. Safety protocols and all that." The crew of 12 descended to the planet's surface in 2 shuttles. The landscape was breathtaking. Purple grass swayed under twin moons, while crystalline formations jutted from the ground like frozen lightning. The air tasted clean, with a slight metallic tang that reminded Sarah of Earth's mountains after a thunderstorm. The energy signature led them to what appeared to be a massive crater, easily half a mile across. At its center stood a structure that defied easy description. It looked like someone had taken a Gothic cathedral and twisted it through several dimensions, creating impossible angles and surfaces that hurt to look at directly. "The energy's coming from inside," Marcus reported, checking his scanner. It's massive. Whatever's in there has been generating power for a very long time." As they approached the structure, Sarah noticed something that made her pause. The building wasn't made of stone or metal, it was grown. Organic curves blended seamlessly with geometric patterns, creating something that was both beautiful and deeply alien. "Captain," whispered Jake Morrison, their youngest crew member, "look at the base." Chains, massive chains, each link the size of a person, wrapped around the structure's base and extended deep into the surrounding rock. The metal was unlike anything in their databases. It seemed to absorb light while somehow glowing with its own inner fire. "What kind of species builds a prison like this?" Dr. Vasquez murmured, running her hands along one of the chains. Her instruments went crazy, detecting materials that shouldn't exist according to human science. The entrance was a simple archway, completely unguarded. As they stepped inside, emergency lighting flickered to life along the walls, revealing a long corridor that descended into darkness. The air grew warmer as they walked, and Sarah could swear she heard something breathing in the distance. "Motion sensors are picking up something big," Marcus reported, his voice echoing strangely in the confined space. "Really big, and it's alive." They found her in the deepest chamber. The dragon, for lack of a better term, was magnificent and terrible. Easily 60 feet from nose to tail, her scales shifted between deep purple and midnight black, like oil on water. Her wings were folded against her body, but Sarah could see they would span the entire chamber when spread. Ancient wisdom gleamed in eyes that held the depth of stars. But it was the chains that broke Sarah's heart. They covered the dragon completely, around her neck, her legs, her wings, her tail. Each chain pulsed with the same strange energy they'd detected from orbit, and where they touched the dragon's scales, the metal had worn grooves into her flesh over what must have been centuries. The dragon's massive head turned toward them slowly, and when she spoke, her voice was like distant thunder, mixed with the sound of wind through canyons. "Humans," she said, the word carrying surprise and something that might have been hope. "I had not expected—" "Humans." Sarah stepped forward, her team fanning out behind her with weapons ready. Not that their plasma rifles would do much good against something this size. "My name is Sarah Chen," she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "We're explorers from Earth. We didn't know anyone was here." The dragon's laugh was bitter but not unkind. "Here. Yes, I am here. I have been here for 200 of your years, give or take a decade. Time becomes fluid when one has nothing but thoughts for company." "Who are you?" Sarah asked. "Who did this to you?" "I am Zerath Nala of the Draconic Hegemony. I am a guardian of the third spiral. Or I was, before the architects decided I knew too much about their plans." Her eyes fixed on Sarah with an intensity that was almost physical. "Tell me, little human, what do you know of the galaxy beyond your small corner?" Sarah felt her team's tension as they realized they were speaking with something, that might have knowledge spanning centuries of galactic history. In HFY terms, they'd just made first contact with a being that could either be their greatest ally or their worst nightmare. "Not as much as we'd like," Sarah admitted. "We've met a few other species, the Zenthari, the Voss Collective, the Hegemony of Steel. Trade partners, mostly. A few territorial disputes here and there, but nothing serious." Zerath Nala's eyes widened. "The Hegemony of Steel? They still exist?" She tried to shift position, and the chains clinked ominously. "The architects told me they had been absorbed into their collective." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward with her scanner. "The chains, they're not just physical restraints, are they? I'm reading some kind of energy field that's interfacing directly with your nervous system." "Perceptive," Zerath Nala acknowledged. "They bind not just my body, but my powers. I cannot access my abilities, cannot change form, cannot even heal properly. I am diminished." Sarah studied the chains more closely. The technology was clearly beyond human understanding, but there was something about the energy pattern that seemed almost familiar, like it was designed by minds that thought in similar patterns to humans, but with far more advanced knowledge. "The architects," Sarah said. "Who are they?" "They call themselves the Universal Order. They believe the galaxy would be better served under their guidance. They have been recruiting species for millennia, absorbing their knowledge, their abilities, their uniqueness, and adding it to their collective understanding." Zerath Nala's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "They see anything that cannot be controlled as a threat to universal harmony." Marcus checked his chronometer. "Captain, we should head back to the ship soon. The others will be expecting our report." But Sarah was studying the dragon's restraints with growing anger. 200 years. This being had been chained here for 200 years. Alone, unable to heal, unable to escape. It went against everything humans stood for: freedom, dignity, the right to exist without oppression. "What did you do?" she asked. "What made them imprison you rather than just absorb you?" Zerath Nala's laugh was sad and proud at the same time. "I learned something about them that they did not wish known. The architects are not what they appear to be. They claim to seek universal harmony, but they are parasites. They do not unite species. They consume them, leaving only empty husks that serve their will." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. If this was true, then humanity's expansion into the galaxy might eventually bring them into contact with something far worse than they'd imagined. "And you tried to warn people," she guessed. "I tried to unite the free species against them. The Draconic Hegemony, the Stellar Assembly, even some of the machine collectives. But I was betrayed by one who was already compromised." Zerath Nala closed her massive eyes. "They could have killed me, but my knowledge was valuable to them. So they chained me here. In this prison they grew specifically to contain me and left me to contemplate the futility of resistance." Dr. Vasquez was running more detailed scans of the chains. Captain, I'm reading some interesting properties in these restraints. The energy field is incredibly complex, but it seems to be maintaining itself through some kind of feedback loop. If we could disrupt that loop— You cannot free me, Zerath Nala said firmly. Many have tried. The Zenthari sent a rescue mission 50 years ago. The chains consumed them. The energy required to break them would destroy this planet. Sarah studied the massive dragon, seeing past the fearsome appearance to the intelligence and determination in those ancient eyes. This was someone who had stood against impossible odds for freedom and justice. Someone who reminded her of the best of humanity. "Has anyone ever tried kindness?" she asked quietly. Zerath Nala blinked, clearly confused by the question. "Kindness? You've been here for 200 years. Has anyone ever just talked to you? Offered you company, comfort, basic dignity?" The dragon was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. "The architects, they do not understand such concepts. They see only efficiency, order, control. Those who have found me since, they feared me, or pitied me, or sought to use my knowledge for their own purposes. But kindness—" She shook her massive head. "That is a concept I had almost forgotten." Sarah made a decision that would change everything. "We'll be back tomorrow. Would you like some company?" The hope that flickered in Zerath Nala's eyes was heartbreaking and beautiful at the same time. "You would return? Even knowing what I am? What I've done?" "You stood up for freedom," Sarah said simply. "That's all we need to know." As they headed back to the surface, Sarah's mind was already working on plans. Her crew was quiet, but she could see the same thoughts reflected in their faces. They'd found something worth fighting for. The chains had held for 200 years through force, fear, and despair. Tomorrow, they would learn what happened when humanity decided those chains needed to be broken. Sarah returned the next day carrying a thermal container and accompanied by Dr. Vasquez and Jake Morrison. The others remained at the ship, analyzing the mineral deposits and maintaining communication with Earth Command. She had spent most of the night thinking about their discovery and what it meant for humanity's future in the galaxy. Zerath Nala was awake when they entered the chamber, her massive head turning toward them with an expression that might have been surprise. "You actually came back," the dragon said, and Sarah caught something vulnerable in that ancient voice. "I said I would." Sarah set down the container and activated its heating element. "I brought soup." The word seemed to confuse Zerath Nala. "Soup?" "Warm food. Comfort food, we call it, made from vegetables and protein." Sarah ladled the steaming liquid into a large bowl they'd fabricated specifically for this purpose. "I wasn't sure what you could eat, so I kept it simple." Dr. Vasquez was already running her scans again, but with different equipment this time. "I brought more sophisticated analysis gear. If we're going to understand these chains, we need detailed molecular-level scans." Jake positioned himself near the entrance with a portable communications array. "Captain, I'm establishing a direct link to the ship's computers. We can run real-time analysis on anything Dr. Vasquez finds." Zerath Nala watched their preparations with growing amazement. "You are studying my prison?" "Why?" "Because someone needs to," Sarah said simply, offering the bowl of soup. "And humans have a bad habit of refusing to accept that something is impossible just because it's never been done before." The dragon lowered her massive head toward the bowl. The chains around her neck clinked softly. And Sarah saw how they chafed against scales that had never fully healed. With careful precision that spoke of centuries of practice, Zerath Nala managed to drink some of the soup. Her eyes widened. "It is warm. I had forgotten warmth could exist without pain." Sarah felt her heart clench. 200 years without kindness, without comfort, without even warm food. Tell me about the architects, she said, settling cross-legged on the floor near the dragon's head. What do we need to know? As Zareth Nala spoke, Dr. Vasquez worked with her scanners, and Jake relayed information back to the ship. The dragon described a galaxy where the architects had been slowly expanding their influence for over 1,000 years, always presenting themselves as peacekeepers and unifiers. They approach each species the same way, Zareth Nala explained between careful sips of soup. First contact is always friendly, offering technology, protection, membership in their universal order. They solve problems, end conflicts, bring prosperity. Most species welcome them eagerly. But there's a catch, Sarah guessed. Always. Once a species is dependent on architect technology, the changes begin. Subtle at first, modifications to their communication networks, their transportation, their governance. They call it optimization for universal harmony. Zareth Nala's voice grew bitter. By the time a species realizes what is happening, they can no longer resist. Their thoughts, their culture, their very identity becomes part of the architect collective consciousness. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her scanners. Captain, I'm finding some interesting patterns in the chain structure. The energy field isn't just suppressing her abilities, it's actively draining them and channeling that energy somewhere else. Where? Sarah asked. Unknown. But the energy signature suggests it's being transmitted across vast distances. These chains aren't just a prison, they're a collection device. Zareth Nala's eyes flashed with anger. They have been stealing my life force for 2 centuries? I knew they were cruel, but this... Jake's communication array crackled with an incoming message. Captain, Dr. Kim at the ship has been analyzing the data we've sent. She has some theories about the chain technology. Dr. Kim's voice came through clearly. Captain Chen, I've been comparing the energy patterns to our database of known technologies. The architect chains use a resonance frequency that matches the subject's natural bioelectric field. It's like they created a perfect harmonic trap. Sarah turned to Zareth Nala. What does your life force normally do? What abilities did you have before this? I was a guardian. I could shape matter at the molecular level, generate energy fields, travel through space without a ship. I could heal others, enhance their abilities temporarily, even share knowledge directly from mind to mind. The dragon's voice was filled with longing. Most importantly, I could inspire hope in others. That was my greatest gift. The ability to help beings reach beyond what they thought possible. Dr. Vasquez suddenly stopped her scanning, staring at her instruments in amazement. Captain, you need to see this. The energy pattern has been fluctuating ever since we arrived. It's subtle, but it's definitely changing. Changing how? The harmonic frequency is becoming less stable. Something is interfering with the resonance lock. Dr. Vasquez ran another scan. It started when you offered her the soup. Sarah looked at the empty bowl, then at Zareth Nala. The chains respond to emotional states. The architects do not understand emotions, Zareth Nala said slowly, her voice filled with sudden hope. To them, emotional responses are simply chemical reactions to be cataloged and controlled. They would never design a prison system that accounted for genuine compassion, because they do not believe it exists. Jake was frantically relaying information back to the ship while taking notes on his tablet. Dr. Kim, are you getting this? The chains are vulnerable to positive emotional resonance? Dr. Kim's excited voice crackled through the comm. This is incredible. If the chains are calibrated to suppress negative emotional states, despair, anger, hopelessness, then positive emotions might create cascade failures in the containment field. It's like using the wrong key in a lock designed to only turn one way. Sarah stood up, her mind racing. Zareth Nala, in 200 years, has anyone ever shown you kindness? Real, genuine kindness without wanting something in return? The dragon was quiet for a long moment. No. Even those who pitied me wanted my knowledge, my power, something they could use. You are the first to offer something without asking for anything back. Dr. Vasquez checked her readings again. The destabilization is continuing, but slowly. At this rate, it would take months or years to make any real difference. Then we have work to do, Sarah said firmly. Jake, I want you to establish a permanent communication relay here. Dr. Vasquez, can you set up long-term monitoring equipment? Captain, Zarath said carefully, you should know. The architects monitor this prison. They will eventually notice your presence here. Sarah's smile was fierce. Let them. Humanity didn't get where we are by backing down from bullies. She knelt down near the dragon's massive head. Besides, we have something they don't. What is that? We're really good at making friends and really stubborn about helping them. Over the following days, Sarah established a pattern. Each morning, she would bring warm food and simply talk with Zarath. Sometimes Dr. Vasquez joined them, sharing stories about human scientific discoveries and marveling at the dragon's knowledge of galactic civilizations. Jake set up entertainment systems, music, videos, books from Earth's libraries translated into Zarath's language. The dragon began to change. The despair that had clouded her magnificent eyes slowly lifted, replaced by curiosity and something that looked suspiciously like joy. She shared stories of her homeworld, described the beauty of nebulae seen from space, and taught them about species they'd never heard of. Your people, Zarath said one evening as Sarah read her poetry from Earth. They find beauty in imperfection, don't they? These poems speak of loss, of struggle, of triumph over impossible odds. We call it the human condition, Sarah replied. We're not the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced species we've met, but we're persistent, and we don't give up on each other. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her daily readings. The destabilization is accelerating. The more time we spend here, the more the chains weaken. But, Captain, I'm picking up something else. Energy readings suggest there's a monitoring system built into this prison. Someone knows we're here. As if summoned by her words, the air in the chamber suddenly shimmered, and a figure materialized. Tall, graceful, with features that were almost human, but somehow wrong in subtle ways. Its skin had a metallic sheen, and its eyes held no warmth whatsoever. Greetings, humans of Earth, the figure said in a voice like crystalline chimes. I am Constructor Meridian of the Universal Order. Your presence here is unexpected. Sarah stood slowly, placing herself between the architect and Zarath. This is a free star system. We have every right to be here. Of course, Meridian said with a smile that never reached its eyes. We merely wish to understand your interest in this particular location. The entity you have been visiting is a criminal, contained here for the safety of all galactic civilizations. She's a political prisoner, Sarah said flatly. Imprisoned for opposing your expansion. Meridian's expression didn't change. We see you have been misinformed. This creature was responsible for inciting violence that resulted in the deaths of billions. Her imprisonment was necessary for galactic peace. That's not true! Zarath's voice boomed through the chamber, filled with rage and pain. I tried to warn them about what you really are. Emotional responses, Meridian said dismissively. This is precisely why the entity requires containment. Uncontrolled emotions lead to chaos, violence, unnecessary suffering. The universal order brings harmony. Sarah studied the architect carefully. There was something about its manner, its words, that reminded her of every tyrant in human history who had claimed to act for the greater good. And who decides what harmony looks like? She asked. Those with sufficient wisdom and knowledge to make such decisions objectively, Meridian replied. Emotional beings lack the perspective necessary for proper governance. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward. You've been draining her life force for 200 years. How is that harmonious? For the first time, Meridian showed something like surprise. You have been studying the containment systems? How curious. We had not expected humans to possess such analytical capabilities. You'd be surprised what humans can do when we put our minds to it, Sarah said, especially when someone we care about is being hurt. Meridian tilted its head. Care about? The entity is not of your species. It poses no threat to human space. Your emotional attachment is illogical. That's where you're wrong, Sarah said with a smile that was all teeth. Humans are really good at caring about people who aren't exactly like us. It's kind of our thing. The architect stared at them for a long moment, clearly processing this information. We will be monitoring your activities more closely, it finally said. For your own safety, of course. This entity remains dangerous. The figure shimmered and vanished, leaving behind only the faint scent of ozone. Well, Jake said after a moment of silence. That was ominous. Dr. Vasquez checked her instruments again. Captain, the destabilization just accelerated dramatically. Whatever that thing did, it affected the chain's energy matrix. Zerath Nala was staring at the spot where Meridian had stood. It is afraid, she said with wonder. The architect is actually afraid of what you are doing. Good, Sarah said grimly. Fear means we're on the right track. She looked around at her team. From now on, we work in shifts. Someone is always here with Zerath Nala, and we keep bringing soup. As they prepared to leave for the evening, Zerath Nala called out softly, Sarah, thank you. For the first time in 2 centuries, I have hope. Sarah smiled back at the magnificent dragon. Hold on to that feeling. We're going to need it. 3 weeks after first contact with Constructor Meridian, Sarah arrived at the prison chamber to find Zerath Nala in obvious distress. The dragon's breathing was labored, and the chains around her body were glowing more brightly than usual. They are increasing the power, Zerath Nala explained weakly. The architects know the containment field is weakening. They are trying to compensate by drawing more of my life force. Dr. Vasquez confirmed the readings. Energy drain has tripled in the last 24 hours. At this rate, she paused, unwilling to voice the conclusion. At this rate, I will not survive another week, Zerath Nala finished gently. It is acceptable. These past weeks with your friendship have been worth centuries of solitude. Like hell, Sarah said fiercely. Jake, get the entire team down here. Emergency protocols. Within an hour, all 12 crew members of the Perseverance had assembled in the chamber. Sarah had explained the situation during the journey down, and she could see the determination in their faces. Humanity might be new to the galactic stage, but they understood injustice when they saw it. Options? Sarah asked Dr. Vasquez. The destabilization we've been tracking is real, but it's not fast enough. We need a massive emotional resonance spike to cascade the containment failure. Dr. Vasquez gestured to her readings. The chains are like a musical instrument tuned to despair. Every act of kindness, every moment of genuine care, creates discord in their harmony. But we need something powerful enough to shatter them completely. Chief Engineer Maria Santos stepped forward. Captain, what if we amplify the signal? I could rig our ship's communication array to broadcast emotional resonance directly into the chain matrix. That's theoretically possible, Dr. Vasquez said slowly, but we'd need a source of pure emotional energy, something genuine and powerful enough to overwhelm systems designed to contain a being like Zerath Nala. Sarah looked around at her crew, at Marcus with his steady reliability, at Jake's youthful optimism, at Dr. Vasquez's brilliant curiosity, at Maria's practical ingenuity, At all of them who had volunteered for a dangerous mission to the edge of known space and who had spent the last weeks bringing food, entertainment, and companionship to a prisoner they'd never met before. "I have an idea," she said quietly, "but it's going to sound crazy." She knelt beside Zarathnala's massive head and pulled out the thermal container she'd brought every day for 3 weeks. "I'm going to make soup, but this time all of us are going to help, and we're going to put everything we've got into it." The dragon's eyes widened with understanding. "You wish to infuse the food with your emotions, your caring, your hope for my freedom." "More than that," Sarah said. "We're going to infuse it with the most powerful force in the human arsenal. The absolute refusal to let someone we care about suffer when we can do something about it." What followed was unlike anything the sterile halls of the prison had ever witnessed. The crew of the Perseverance turned the chamber into an impromptu kitchen. They brought down supplies from the ship, vegetables, proteins, spices, everything they had, and began cooking. But this wasn't just meal preparation. As each crew member added ingredients, they shared their thoughts, their feelings, their reasons for being there. Marcus stirred the pot while talking about his daughter back on Earth. "She's about your age, geologically speaking," he told Zarathnala with a grin. "She asked me to bring back stories of the people we meet. I'm going to tell her about the bravest person I've ever known." Dr. Vasquez added herbs while explaining her research into comparative consciousness across species. "Intelligence takes so many forms," she said. "What the architects call chaos, I call diversity. They want to eliminate differences, but differences are what make existence beautiful." Jake seasoned the soup while playing recordings of Earth music. "This is what my grandmother always said. Food tastes better when it's made with love. She never met a dragon, but I think she'd approve." One by one, each crew member contributed something to the soup and something to the emotional resonance building in the chamber. Chief Santos talked about engineering problems that seemed impossible until someone cared enough to solve them. Communications Officer Park shared poetry from her homeland. Medical Officer Thompson discussed the healing power of hope. As they cooked, Dr. Vasquez monitored the chains. "The energy patterns are becoming increasingly unstable," she reported with excitement. "The harmonic resonance is breaking down faster than I've ever seen." Sarah was the last to add her contribution, a pinch of salt from Earth's oceans, and her own conviction that freedom was worth any risk. As the soup simmered, she looked up at Zarathnala's magnificent eyes. "This soup represents something the architects can't understand," she said. "It's not just food. It's every human who's ever stood up to a bully, every person who's ever helped a stranger, every act of defiance against those who claim the right to control others." The container finished heating, and Sarah ladled the soup into the oversized bowl. The liquid steamed with more than just heat. There was something almost visible in the vapor, a warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. As Sarah offered the bowl to Zarathnala, the dragon looked around at the assembled humans with tears in her ancient eyes. "I do not understand how beings who have known me for mere weeks could care this deeply about my fate." "That's because you haven't met humans before," Sarah said simply. "We're stubborn that way." Zarathnala lowered her head to drink from the bowl. The moment the soup touched her lips, the chamber filled with light. The chains began to sing, a harmonic frequency that started low and built to a crescendo that made the air itself vibrate. But this wasn't the usual droning of containment. This was discord, chaos, the sound of systems failing as they tried to process something they were never designed to handle. "Energy cascade failure!" Dr. Vasquez shouted over the noise. "The entire containment matrix is collapsing!" Constructor Meridian materialized in the chamber with several other architect figures, their perfect faces showing something that might have been panic. "Cease this activity immediately," Meridian commanded. "You are interfering with critical galactic security infrastructure." "No," Sarah said, standing to face the architects. "We're showing a friend basic human decency. If your security can't handle that, Maybe your security is the problem. The chains around Zarath Nala's body began to crack. 2 centuries of perfect harmonic resonance shattered against the simple reality of genuine care freely given. The metal that had held for millennia could not withstand something it was never designed to contain: hope powered by love. "This is impossible," another architect said, its voice losing its crystalline perfection. "Emotional responses cannot override technological systems." "Watch and learn," growled Chief Santos. The first chain snapped with a sound like thunder, then another, and another. As each restraint broke, Zarath Nala seemed to grow larger, more magnificent, more herself. Power that had been drained away for 2 centuries came flooding back. "Stop them!" Meridian ordered the other architects, who raised devices that looked like weapons. They never got the chance to use them. Zarath Nala's freed wings swept across the chamber, creating a barrier of energy that sent the architects tumbling backward. When she spoke, her voice carried the power of stars being born. 200 years, you have fed on my despair," she said, rising to her full, magnificent height. "Let me show you what happens when hope is restored." The dragon's scales blazed with inner fire as her suppressed abilities returned. She reached out with one massive claw and touched Sarah's hand with impossible gentleness. "Through you, I remember who I was meant to be," Zarath Nala said. "A guardian, a protector, a beacon of hope for the free peoples of the galaxy." The architects scrambled to retreat, but Zarath Nala's voice followed them. "Tell your collective this. Humanity is not alone in the galaxy. They have allies now, and we will not be absorbed, controlled, or contained." As the enemy figures vanished, the last of the chains fell away. Zarath Nala stretched her wings to their full span, and the chamber filled with warm, golden light that seemed to heal something broken in the very air. "What happens now?" Jake asked, staring up at the magnificent being they had helped free. "Now," Zarath Nala said with a smile in her voice, "we begin the real work. The architects have been expanding unchecked for too long. But they made one critical error in their calculations." "What's that?" Sarah asked. "They assumed that superior technology would always triumph over primitive emotion." The dragon's laugh was like music. "They never encountered humans before. You have something more powerful than all their collected knowledge, the absolute refusal to abandon hope, even in impossible circumstances." Dr. Vasquez was still scanning with her instruments. "The energy signature from this place has changed completely. Instead of draining power, it's now generating it." "This prison was designed to contain and drain a guardian's abilities," Zarath Nala explained. "But with the constraints removed, it becomes what it was always meant to be, a beacon that can be seen across the galaxy. Other imprisoned guardians, other enslaved species, other free peoples who thought they were alone, they will know that liberation is possible." Sarah looked around at her crew, seeing the same mixture of pride and determination in their faces. They had come here to mine minerals and had instead started a galactic revolution with soup and stubbornness. "So, what's our next move?" Marcus asked. Zarath Nala turned her ancient, wise eyes toward Earth's direction. "We teach the galaxy what your species already knows, that freedom shared is freedom multiplied, that kindness is not weakness, but the greatest strength, that no being should stand alone against oppression when friends are willing to stand with them." Sarah smiled, thinking of the stars beyond this world, of species yet unmet, of the architect's vast empire built on the premise that control was preferable to chaos. "The architects want universal order," she said, "but humans prefer universal family, and we just got a very powerful new family member." As they prepared to leave the transformed chamber, Sarah realized that they had accomplished something greater than just freeing one prisoner. They had proven that the core of human nature, the willingness to care for others at personal risk, was not a weakness to be corrected, but a force that could reshape the galaxy. The soup had been just the beginning. The real meal was hope served to those who had forgotten they were worthy of it. And humanity was just getting started.